Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberly Hoeppner, and today is July 17th, 2014. When we're not on air, you can always check out our website at arh.noaa.gov, or you can call our weather information line at 1-800-472-0391. And as always, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And in just a moment, we're going to be talking about the weather across the state and how it might be affecting your area. The first topic of the day today will be the flood advisories that are out across the state. One for the southeast, we have a flood advisory for a glacial dam break down near Hyder, and this is going to be out until Sunday 5 p.m., so stay tuned for updates on that flood advisory. And then we also have flood advisories out for the Koyukuk and Kobuk rivers. The Kobuk River has already crested, as a report came in earlier this afternoon, and the Koyukuk will see cresting, but not until probably tomorrow, and with additional rain showers continuing through the course of the end of the weeks. Be on the lookout for rivers rising in this area. Effects here have been roads near the river have been affected with water going over the road that was in the Koyukuk River area, and also be aware that there's a lot of sediment coming down, so the river banks are washing away, so significant effects on the banks as well. And now going on to the fire weather danger that's across the state. We have a ridge of high pressure currently that's weakening across the state, so there is some high fire danger across the central interior and along the eastern parts of the Alaska Range. However, as we head into the weekend, maybe we'll have some updates on this and it won't be as bad. Now looking out at the satellite towards eastern Russia here, western Russia, we have high pressure that's in control across the western part of the Bering. Putting that into motion, you can see this clockwise motion heading towards Shimia, and just south of that area we have the jet stream that's bringing this plume of moisture, and that's really interesting because we have a jet stream that's tapping all this moisture right into the southeastern areas. A lot of low clouds, you can't see them on the satellite, but I can assure you the Bering is socked in with mostly low stratus and some fog across the central parts of the Bering. Now taking a look at the Alaska Peninsula, there was some clearing around this area, allowing it to really warm up today. Otherwise, mostly cloudy across much of the state, with here's the moisture plume that's pulling up towards the southern part of the Gulf. And take a look at the southeastern areas. They had broken out of the clouds a little bit this afternoon as well. Across the central interior, they saw some clearing earlier this morning, but some cloud activity popping up during the day. You can watch this plume of moisture that's heading over towards the southeast. Another interesting thing to note on the satellite is you'll see a movement coming off the Arctic here, and this is going to be bring a reinforcing shot to a cold front that's draped across the western part of the Brooks Range back down towards the Kuskokwim Delta area and into the central parts of the Bering. So take a look at that one more time, and you can see that in motion as this new air mass comes toward the western coastal areas. Now take a look at your weather for the day. There's a surface low just to the north of Barrow here with a stationary front draped across just north of the Brooks Range, brings some light shower activity along the Beaufort seacoast. And this cold front that was extending from the western part of the Brooks Range back towards the central part of the Bering. Light rain mainly across this cold front here with some light shower or drizzly activity across the central Bering. A low pressure system associated with the upper level system coming towards the southern Gulf of Alaska mainly brings some rain ahead of this system and just to the south. And along the Alaska Peninsula, like I said, they're just having this cloud activity just kind of creeping up later this afternoon. Some light shower activity across the southeastern part of the Gulf of Alaska, and that's heading towards the Dixon entrance. Now looking at tonight's forecast, thunderstorms will be possible late this afternoon and evening time frame across the eastern part of the Alaska Range and probably the central interior, as they had a couple thunderstorms just across the Alcan border earlier on today. Now the low pressure heading towards the Gulf waters is mainly going to keep this moisture plume heading towards the Dixon entrance. So don't expect much rain in the southeastern areas, maybe a few stray showers towards Hyder. And then across the Gulf waters, there's a possibility that we have some fog setting up along the coastal areas tonight. Across the central interior, showers as an upper level wave pushes some energy across the state. So the main rain band will be associated along the cold front. So from the Yukon Valley area back towards the Yukon Delta, they'll see the bulk of the rain tonight. Some light shower activity and fog all along the Beaufort seacoast and the northwest towards the Seward Peninsula. Some light showers and fog here. And then the Alaska Peninsula, they'll probably see a break through the nighttime hours as they remain between this cold frontal system and this low pressure to the south. Now looking at the Aleutian chain, they're going to stay in a light showery pattern. High pressure is going to stay across the western parts of the Bering, so we'll see some areas of fog continuing across the central Bering. As we head into your forecast on Friday, this cold front, not very impressive here, but it's not moving very quick. So that's going to allow these showers to continue, and have to keep an eye on the rivers up the Koyukuk and the Kobuk rivers, as this low pressure is just going to stay, keep that cold front draped across the Brooks Range to the north. And on the skirt of it, it has another cold front that's going to be reinforcing late on Friday into Saturday. So this will bring another round of showers towards the northwest coast Friday night. Now the high pressure system is going to start breaking down across the Bering, although it's going to hold it 10:20 through the day. So light showers are going to sneak in here just as the front has drooped south. The ridge is going to actually change its curve around the Bering, but let that cold front bring some cooler temperatures and some light rain to the central Aleutians. Now across the Gulf waters, another dry day, keeping the coastal clear. Some patchy morning fog will clear up for the afternoon, so it should work out for a nice day across the western part of the Gulf, the northern Gulf areas. This low pressure system may bring some rain on up through the day across the southeast, but most of the rain associated with this low pressure system is going to stay to the east and the south. So we shouldn't see a lot of wraparound moisture on this system, but we'll see some light showers activity very close to the center of that. So looking into your Saturday forecast, that low pressure system is going to weaken and become light showers. Let's keep some light showers continuing across the day on Saturday as the system just kind of stalls and weakens in place. Along the Gulf waters, expect this next cold front that was across the central and interior and southwest to finally push into the western Gulf, bring some rain across south central Kenai and the western part of the Gulf, including Kodiak. And here's this next cold front that's going to push through into the central part of the Brooks Range by Saturday afternoon, draping the next front across the southwest, bring another round of showers here. So here's this ridge that I mentioned is going to be starting to shift and break down. At the same time, another low pressure system is coming up from the North Pacific. Some rain associated with this system, again, will be closely associated to the low pressure system and will not see much propagation northward, and it should track towards the east. So mainly just low clouds and fog will continue across the Aleutians, with areas of fog moving in towards the Pribilof Islands here. Now, looking at your temperatures for today, it did warm up quite a bit across the southwest, so actually reached 73 in King Salmon. We'll get to that in just a moment. Across the southeast, they saw temperatures mainly in the upper 50s to lower 60s due to the cloud cover they kept for most of the day, and then they broke out into the sun, warmed up a little bit. And the northern coastal areas, still in clouds, had seen temperatures up in the upper 50s. Where it was broken cloud cover during the afternoon today, they saw up into the mid 60s, with coastal locations along the north seeing temperatures in the mid 40s. 40 degrees up near Barrow, they actually creeped up to 46. So more out towards Point Lay, where it was 41 degrees, was the coolest temperatures of the day. As you drop south towards the Seward Peninsula, saw temperatures going up into the mid 50s very quickly into the 60s across the southwest, where they saw temperatures, like I said, at King Salmon at 73. The Alaska Peninsula was near 60 today. The Pribilofs were hanging out in the lower 50s, and the rest of the Aleutians were in the lower 50s as well. Now, as we head into your forecast for tonight, the temperatures will drop slightly across the Aleutian Channel, be in the upper 40s, with temperatures around 50 degrees across much of the Gulf waters, possibly dropping down a couple areas into the upper 40s. Now, as the central interior, a little bit warmer in the mid 50s. Along the north and northwestern areas, expect temperatures coolest there into the upper 30s. Now, looking at your temperatures tomorrow, another warm day across the central interior down towards the Alaska Range. We'll see temperatures climbing up to near 70. Across the southeast, temperatures here will be in the mid 60s. Now, along the northern coast and northwest, temperatures will be coolest there once again in the upper 30s to mid 40s, and back towards the southwest, expect a little bit more cloud cover, cooler conditions with some rain moving in, keeping it down just below 60 degrees. Same for the Alaska Peninsula. And as we look at your flying weather for tomorrow, this is where you can really see where the cloud cover is going to affect flying conditions. Mainly VFR conditions only across the central interior. Possible chance for afternoon thunderstorms once again across the eastern Alaska Range, central interior. MVFR conditions mainly for morning fog and low stratus all across the southeast, and then possibly breaking out for a period during the day. Since the low pressure system is staying to the south, they might see VFR conditions through the day. IFR conditions would be possible across the northwest coast, with the front in place all across the west coast and out across the Bering, and MVFR conditions elsewhere across the west and the northern areas. So looking at your passes individually, Anatuvik Pass tomorrow will be mainly IFR, and Adigan Pass will be IFR, possibly improving to MVFR during the afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill will both be MVFR, and Rainy Pass will be MVFR as well. Windy Pass will be MVFR, Isabel will be VFR, Mentasta will be VFR, and at Tanita Pass will be VFR as well. Portage will go MVFR in the morning to VFR later in the day, and VFR on the west side of that. And then Chilkoot and White Pass will both be MVFR in the morning, with the fog conditions possibly improving during the day to MVFR. Looking at your freezing levels for tomorrow, the surface freezing level is just to the north of Barrow there, and then 2,000-foot level along the northwest coast, increasing to 8,000 feet by the time you get to the southwest. 8,000 and above across all of the Gulf waters, and across much of the Bering, increasing to 12,000 feet around the Aleutians. Looking at your icing for tomorrow, main concerns are going to be below 12,000, above 2,000 across the northwestern areas, and back towards the west above 4,000, probably below 10,000 here. So all above 10,000 warm, possible light icing across the Bering, and then below 10,000, just along above 10,000 foot, for this low pressure system that's moving off towards the Dixon entrance. And looking at your jet stream, it's going to be mainly westerly tomorrow, and that's what's pushing those North Pacific just due east, with a fairly slow jet between 80 to 95 knots. Across the north, this is what's driving those low pressure systems, bring the cooler temperatures towards the northwest, around 95 knots out of the eastern parts of Russia. Now looking at your 9,000-foot winds for tomorrow, this low pressure circulation is probably going to be just a little bit further south and pushing about 20 knots across the eastern Gulf and wraps around the low pressure, mainly a westerly flow across the interior areas between 20 and 35 knots and 25 to 35 knots as well along the northern coast. Across the Bering, more of a northwesterly flow between 15 and 20 knots, really not a lot of wind turbulence there, and across the far west, even lighter wind speeds between 10 and 15 knots. Now your 3,000-foot winds very similar with the low pressure out in the Gulf of Alaska, a northwesterly flow between 10 and 20 knots. Across the interior areas, mainly between 20 and 25 knots, the strongest winds along the northern areas where the low pressure system is, and just lighter wind speeds across most of the south and southeastern areas for tomorrow. So a good flying day for the south central and southeastern areas all the way back for the Kenai. So good flying day in store for you. Okay, tomorrow's turbulence, like I said, mainly confined with the upper low pressure system to the north and above 1,000 feet all the way back to the Seward Peninsula. Chance for some thunderstorms there in the afternoon, so turbulence possibilities for the eastern part of the Alaska Range. Now in just a moment, we'll be back with your marine forecast.
Leo is leaving and Orion returns. Hey there, stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. Leo the Lion is about to leave the evening sky, but we have loads of summer stars and planets to show you.
And I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory. Even though it's the middle of summer, winter's Orion is on his way back, and you can use the moon to find some early morning planets.
Let's show you.
We're looking northwest any night next week about an hour after sunset. One of the most familiar star patterns is just hanging up there for you to see, the Big Dipper. We're going to use the two pointer stars, Dubhe and Merak, but backwards this time. Usually we have you trace a line up this way to find Polaris, the North Star.
But this time, put it in reverse and point down toward the horizon, and you'll land in the middle of the king of the beasts, Leo the Lion. Leo's brightest star, Regulus, will be close to the horizon and will get lower each night as the sun steadily approaches.
I'd like to point out a faint, dim constellation that we almost never mention, Leo Minor. He is a cute little lion cub, but if we turn off the overlay, you'll see why he is rarely mentioned. There's not much there to see.
Remember that constellations are names for areas of the sky. Many of them don't look anything like their names. You know, Dean, after Leo Minor, we'd better come up with something better to see.
Well, we have 2 planets and 3 bright stars over here. Will that do it?
Keep talking. We'll see.
The brightest light over here in the western sky is the orange star Arcturus. Once again, arc to Arcturus from the handle of the Big Dipper.
And then drop a spike to Spica. The reddish-orange planet Mars is about half a fist to the left of Spica and will continue to get dimmer for the rest of the year, as we leave it behind in space. Then, about a fist and a half left of Mars, you should have no trouble spotting the ringed planet Saturn.
So, from Saturn we look to the right for Mars, a little farther for Spica, and above Spica we find orange Arcturus. Go back to Saturn and then look about 2.5 fists farther to the left and you'll come across Antares, the giant red star that marks the heart of the Scorpion.
Now, I know that Orion is on the other side of the sky from Scorpius. So, if Scorpius is still in the sky, how can Orion be coming back?
Let's take a look at the morning sky and you'll see.
Now we're facing east just before dawn next week, the 21st to be exact, and a really skinny waning crescent moon is there to greet you. Look to the left of the moon and you'll spot the Pleiades, the star cluster usually linked to Halloween and fall skies.
Below them is the bright red star Aldebaran in Taurus. And below Taurus, just breaking the horizon, you can see the shoulder stars of Orion. As each day goes by, more and more of Orion will rise into view.
Let's advance a day to Tuesday the 22nd. The moon has moved to just above Aldebaran and is heading toward a pair of bright lights lower on the horizon. The brighter of the two is Venus, and lower to its left is bright pinkish Mercury.
Let's advance another day to the 23rd, and the moon is skinnier. Orion is higher, and Venus is chasing Mercury toward the horizon.
Do it once more, and we have a super skinny moon less than a fist to the right of Venus, and more of Orion has crept above the horizon.
Let's go again to the 25th. And if you have a clear, flat, dark horizon, you may see an extremely skinny crescent moon to the right of Mercury and below Venus. Look over to the right, and even more of Orion has risen into view.
So, to recap, next week after sunset, look west and you'll see Arcturus,
Spica and Mars.
Saturn and Antares in the Scorpion,
Then in the morning, in the east,
the Moon and the Pleiades,
Taurus and Orion.
and on the morning of the 24th, a super scoochie of a super skinny moon near Venus and Mercury.
But you'll see none of this unless you
Keep looking up.
All right, back to the show, on to your marine forecast. Now, looking at your Friday forecast across the southeast, fairly a weak flow tomorrow between 10 and 15 knots across the inner channels, mainly a northwesterly flow except north towards the Lynn Canal, looking at a southerly flow at 15 knots, and seas here will be between 2 and 3 feet, and an offshore flow near the Dixon entrance at 10 knots, and as you head towards Yakutat, get more of a westerly to northwesterly flow. Seas out here will be between 4 and 5 feet, and then as we head into your Saturday, see a pickup of the winds across the area, southerly flow across the inner channels mainly, and northwest flow Petersburg and south. Now looking at the seas, there will be between 3 and 4 feet on Saturday, and a westerly component on the winds for your Saturday in the outer waters between 15 and 20 knots, and seas will be between 7 and 8 feet on Saturday. Looking at the northern Gulf and the western Gulf waters, looking at first Prince William Sound, a variable wind flow, 10 knots, seas 2 feet, so very nice on Friday, and winds all across the area are going to be from the south to southwesterly direction, a little bit more westerly across the Gulf waters, between 15 and 20 knots, and seas here across the inlet waters and Shelikof Strait will be between 4 and 5 feet, and the western Gulf waters will be seeing between 5 to 8 feet, and highest seas towards Kodiak Island. Looking at your Saturday forecast, we're expecting a north to northwesterly flow picking up, so small craft across much of the area out of the west to northwest. And then we'll see seas a little bit higher across the southern inlet between 7 to 9 feet towards Shelikof Strait. The western Gulf waters will see a 30-knot wind between 8 to 9 foot seas. The northern Gulf will be a little bit weaker flow into the Prince William Sound area out of the south at 15 knots. The northern Cook Inlet will also be 15 knots with seas between 2 and 3 feet there. Looking at the Alaska Peninsula, small crafts for most of the area tomorrow out of the west and northwest flow primarily. And then we'll see seas between 6 and 7 feet across the Bering, and then 8 to 11 across the Pacific side. Heading into your Saturday forecast, maintaining small craft across much of the area at 25 to 30 knots, 8 to 10 foot seas here, and 8 foot seas on the Pacific side. Heading over to the Aleutian Islands, we're going to see the weakest flow here where the ridge of high pressure is. Winds will be between 10 and 20 knots, and then seas will be between 5 and 6 feet across the western part of the Aleutians and the Bering side, and then the North Pacific will see seas around 7 feet. Looking at your Saturday forecast, weaker winds as the ridge starts pushing over. All the winds are going to be variable except for the far eastern Aleutians out of the west around 15 knots. Seas across most of the area on this day are going to be between 5 and 6 feet. Looking at your west coast area, a small craft advisory for most of the northern and central Bering until you get down towards the Pribilofs, a little bit lighter wind speeds at 20 knots there, all out of the north and west. And looking at seas here between 6 and 9 feet with the highest seas as you get towards the west coast here. On Saturday, maintaining that small craft advisory across most of the area. Looks like gales as you head up towards Gamble out of the northwest, 35 knots. And seas on this day will be 5 feet near the Pribilof Islands and between 8 and 9 feet across the west coastal areas and out towards St. Lawrence Island and St. Matthew Island. Now looking at the north and western coastal areas, looking at primarily a westerly flow, and we do have small crafts on your Friday forecast. Seas will be around 7 to 8 feet across Kotzebue Sound and north, and across the northern waters we still have some ice just to the west of Barrow here. Shore fast ice is all the way towards the Beaufort seacoast, and then we see a breakup near the Prudhoe Bay area, Dead Horse, and seas here will be between 2 and 3 feet. Looking at your Saturday forecast, mix of winds on this day, looking at primarily a westerly flow in direction. The winds are going to be a little bit lighter across the Beaufort Sea between 10 and 15 knots, and a small craft as you get to the Chukchi Sea right there out of the north at 25 knots. Seas that day will be between 4 and 6 feet for most of the areas, except the north will see seas around 2 feet. Now let's do a recap of your weather for tonight. Have low pressure that's moving mainly towards the east, so we'll see some possible showers get into the southeastern areas, possible patchy fog across the Gulf of Alaska. We'll see some light shower activity this afternoon with possible thunderstorms across the eastern part of the Alaska Range up into the central interior. Light rain along the cold front that's draped across from the Brooks Range back towards the Yukon Delta, and we'll see areas of fog continuing across much of the Bering with some patchy fog across the eastern Aleutians. Along the northern coast, don't forget we have this front that's going to be pushing into the south central area for the weekend, and the rest of the eastern parts of the state some shower activity will increase. Maybe another clear day perhaps for south central and the southeast before they get to see the showers. All right, well, thanks for staying with us for our forecast. We'll be back again at the same time, 5:30 tomorrow night with your forecast. Have a great night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.